Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Part 9, The Life of Sethos, from Masonic Orders of Fraternity by Manly P. Hall. The Life of Sethos, an esoteric novel titled Sethos, attributed to the French abbe Jean de Terrasson, was published in Paris in 1731. The following year, the work appeared in English as The Life of Sethos, taken from Private Memoirs of the Ancient Egyptians, translated from a Greek manuscript into French, and now faithfully done into English from the Paris edition by Mr. Lediard. The preface of the English edition states that the story was derived from a Greek manuscript in the library of a foreign nation, and was published only under the condition that the depository of the original should remain unknown. The Greek author was supposed to have lived in Alexandria during the reign of Marcus Aurelius, but he is not named. Sethos was translated into German by Matthias Claudius in 1777. Although this curious book is the product of extensive research and profound erudition, it certainly did not originate in antiquity. It was a complete invention, possibly derived in part from a work of the Rituals of Initiation by Humberto Melandria, published in Venice in 1657. The 18th century was distinguished by several strange pseudo-Egyptian esoteric writings which appear to have originated in some common source. The Grotto Ripoa, or Initiates of the Ancient Mysteries of the Priest of Egypt, made its appearance for the first time in the German edition of 1770, and was published without either the name of the author or the printer. The librarian Straubaum published a second edition in Berlin in 1778, declaring that the author of the work was until that time unknown, and that an ineffectual search had been made for him in every corner of Germany. The distinguished scholar Regan supposed the Grotto Ripoa to be a concoction by learned Germans of all that could be found in ancient writings on initiation. At this period, the Comte de Saint-Germain was practicing Masonic or Rosicrucian rituals and illuministic rites, laden with Egyptian symbolism. In the secret rooms and hidden cellars of the palace of Prince Karl of Hesse-Kassel at Eckernförde, Count di Cagliostro was perfecting his Egyptian rite of Freemasonry to the general amusement of the French, and the extravagant pseudo-Masonic, pseudo-Egyptian rites of Memphis were attracting wide attention. The genial Court de Gibelin was the outstanding Egyptologist of the French Academy. This distinguished scholar was developing his hypothesis that playing cards were the leaves of a sacred book which had descended from the Egyptians. A few years later, Dupuy wrote upon the history of ancient cults and beliefs. Lenoir traced Freemasonic origins to the rites of ancient Memphis, and Ragon explained the symbolism of the Masonic craft in terms of Greek, Egyptian, and Hindu metaphysics. This sudden increase of the researching instinct along highly specialized lines had but one possible explanation. A definite effort was being made to restore the secret philosophical institutions which had retired into a discreet silence more than 15 centuries earlier. The test of fire, water, and air, according to the initiation rituals of the Egyptians. Sethos, according to the work bearing his name, was an Egyptian prince born about 100 years before the Trojan War. The numerous events which made up his alleged life included an elaborate account of initiation into the mysteries of Isis. The preliminary trials of these rites took place in subterranean chambers under the Egyptian temples, and among the tests of courage and integrity were hazards by fire, water and air, the elaborate symbolic plate of initiation according to the doctrine of the Egyptians, which appeared in Lenoir's La French Masonry, followed the descriptions in Sethos in every detail. There can be no doubt of the origin of the engraving. In his Mozart's und die Königliche Kunst, Paul Netto pointed out that Mozart's Illuminist opera, The Magic Flute, derived most of its Egyptian atmosphere from the Life of Sethos, especially its sections dealing with the initiation of Orpheus and Eurydice. The libretto of this work has been ascribed to Johann Emanuel Schickender, a Freemason, but there has been some question as to how this clever but not profound man accomplished so extraordinary a production. A careful study of the libretto will convince even the skeptical mind that many of the lines were taken almost verbatim from Sethos. The third book of the Life of Sethos devoted considerable space to a discussion of the qualities and attributes of the true initiate. Those who had received initiations occupied a middle ground between the aristocracy and the priesthood, and exercised both temporal and spiritual powers. The initiate was described as a new man in whom the love of virtue and duty had taken the place of all those passions which formerly motivated action, regardless of rank, due to either birth or fortune. The initiate believed himself destined for the benefit of his own country and for all mankind. These masters transformed savage peoples into civilized nations by the establishment of good laws, by instruction in the arts and sciences, and by making themselves examples of heroic virtues. In short, the world owes to the initiates whatever worthy and cultured form it now exhibits. These adepts were men without blemish, yet constantly seeking improvement, men in most things perfect, yet ever striving for greater perfection. Sethos belongs to a class of esoteric writings and, like the Conte de Gabalis, originated in the schools of adepts, functioning secretly beneath the surface of European culture. Such works are always difficult to trace, for their authors had no intention of being discovered. If need arose, they were attributed, with or without permission, to some scholar who found it advisable to be non-committal. The career of Ignace von Born, a celebrated metallurgist and intellectual, is of interest at this stage of the inquiry. This distinguished mining engineer was an ardent Freemason and the founder of a Masonic lodge in Vienna. Mozart was a member of this lodge, as was also the composer, Joseph Haydn. The personal friendship of Mozart and von Born may be implied from the fact that the great composer wrote a short cantata, dated April 20, 1785, which was performed at a special banquet of the lodge, to celebrate von Born's discovery of a method of working ores by amalgamation. Mozart was proposed as a candidate for Freemasonry by Baron von Gamion, and later the composer persuaded his father to join the order. Both Johann Emanuel Schikaneda and Charles Louis Giesecke, associated with the libretto of The Magic Flute, were Freemasons. Schikaneda took all the credit to himself, but Giesecke, a far more scholarly and reliable person, afterwards privately declared that he was responsible for a large portion of the story. Von Born, who was interested in the Egyptian mysteries and who wrote an important paper on the subject in 1784, probably contributed part of the symbolism. Herbert Bradley, in his article, Brother Mozart and Some of His Friends, summarizes the possible association of Mozart and Weishaupt's Illuminist with a cautious utterance. Mozart does not appear to have been a member of the Illuminati, but he must have been intimate with a good many members of that order, as there was a strong branch of it at its birthplace, Salzburg. While it would be unwise to place too much confidence in the words of the bigoted and prejudiced Abbe Burrell, whose memoirs illustrating the history of Jacobinism is a monument of anti-Masonic and anti-Illuminist propaganda, he did gather a number of facts. Of Illuminist activity in Austria, he wrote, "By the death of Chevalier de Born, the sect had lost at Vienna one of its chief adepts." From a Masonic Friendship album, Autograph and Masonic Ciphers of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The internal structure of the Magic Flute reveals a strong Illuminist influence. Those music critics are wrong who dismiss the Magic Flute as a cosmic opera. The appraisal of Goethe, who even considered writing a sequel to the opera, is more valuable. The great poet said, "Granted that the majority of spectators care for nothing but what meets the eye, the initiated will not fail to grasp the higher meaning." Goethe was also a member of the Illuminati. In his book, Paul Nettle enlarged on the symbolism of the opera. He suggested that the Magic Flute was the swan song of the Austrian Freemasonry. The Queen of the Night represented Maria Theresa, who was openly opposed to Masonry. Tamino, the hero of the opera, the liberal and friendly Joseph II, who favored the craft. Pamina, the heroine of the fantasy, the upper decks of Austria. The Black Armor, Monasteros, the black-robed Jesuits or monastic orders, and the clowns, Papagino and Papagina, the peasantry of Austria. The high priest of the rites of Isis and Osiris was Von Born. The sudden entry of the Queen of Night and Monasteros into the temple of Isis and Osiris may have referred to the occasion on which the Empress actually forced her way into one of the Masonic lodges. Monasteros could also have caricatured Leopold Alois Hoffmann, a Masonic traitor who, after being befriended and helped by several lodges, including his own, persuaded the government that the Freemasons were organizing a revolution against the crown. He was partially responsible for the closing of the Masonic lodges of Austria. In an article which appeared in 1794, von Batsko interpreted the Magic Flute according to the letter of the Illuminist doctrine. The Queen of the Night was superstition. Pamina, enlightenment, the child of the Queen and patriarchal religion, now deceased. Zarathustra, reason. The sevenfold circles of the sun were true knowledge or conviction. Monasteros was the human passions. Tamino, the man of might whose spirituality was not yet perfected by trial and ordeal. The snake was evil, Papagino, folly. The ladies of the Queen of the Night were the servants of superstition. The flute was the single speech of nature. The chimes given to Papagino were flattery, and the genii, the powers of the mind. Although Bradley gave this summary and considered it more elaborate than consistent with the conditions under which the Magic Flute was produced, he appended von Batsko's significant words. Those who are members of this order will know and understand. Remembering that to the members of the Illuminati and their cryptic geography, Egypt always signified Austria. It seems certain that Von Born as Zarathustra, and further as the symbol of reason, belonged to the psychopolitical thinking of Adam Weishaupt and Baron von Nigge. Mozart died in 1791, leaving an estate of only 60 florins. He was buried in the black dress of the Masonic Brotherhood, and his last cantata was published by his Masonic Lodge for the benefit of his widow and children. A heavy storm so disrupted the funeral that no record was kept of the location of his grave. He is believed to have been buried in the Pauper's Field. There is some mystery about this which has never been completely resolved. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.